Okay, so welcome everybody. It's really lovely to have you all here, old faces and new faces. Um, so I'm not sure, some of you were here for the first webinar. I'm sure some of you watched the recording. So today builds on what we did, but is not dependent on the previous webinar. So if you haven't seen it, no stress. Today's kind of self-standing, but I am going to refer to things that we spoke about in the first webinar. So if you have any questions, please do let me know. Again, take care of yourselves. Camera on, camera off. If you need to get up and move around and wander around, please do. Really, we have an hour together, and taking care of yourself is priority. Feel free even to be lying on the floor while you listen, whatever feels good and comfortable at this point. So today I'm wanting to share more information about resilience and what impacts it, but it's going to be focused quite a lot on practical tools today, less information. The first one was a lot of information. Today is going to be less so. And we're going to focus on the somatic experience. So what's going on in our bodies? That's where a lot of I'm gonna be bringing your awareness there throughout our conversation. So go slowly with that. If it feels uncomfortable, don't engage with the activity. If it only feels a little bit uncomfortable, see if you can stretch yourself to engage with what I'm inviting or the activity that we're trying. A lot, in fact, for the next hour, whenever you remember, check in with yourself. Where are you? Are you comfortable? How are you sitting? Can you relax a little bit more? Just noticing your body. So just to get us all here, because as I touched in with Jenny before some of you arrived, I am currently on day 27 of this week. So I'm not sure if anybody else's week feels like it's had 27 days in it and it's only Wednesday. Today was an exceptional day where I think I used almost every tool that I'm teaching you or that I'm going to share with you tonight. So just to help us land, I'm going to talk you through just one practice, and I really would invite you to follow along just to center us and invite a bit more internal stillness. So the first part, so there's three parts to it. The first part is you're going to put one hand, either hand, on your forehead and the other hand on the back of your head. And just take a couple of breaths. Your eyes can be open or closed. Just breathe. One more breath. Now you're going to cross your arms and you're going to just hold them on, not on top of your shoulders, but just on the side. You're not going to squeeze in tight. It's just going to put a gentle pressure. Again, just taking 3 or 4 breaths. Allowing yourself just to slow down a little bit. And then the last part is to really feel your chair. If you're sitting on the chair, or if you took up my invitation to lie on the floor, just really feel the pressure, like let your weight drop down into the surface that's supporting you. And just notice how you feel now. Just notice. So kicking off, just to recap from the last webinar, what resilience is. So the definition that we used last time was to trust in our capacity to wisely and compassionately meet whatever comes our way. And I heard it put in a slightly different way. I did some training on resilience 2 weeks ago. And this trainer, Pat Ogden is her name, I'm going to be referring to her quite a lot tonight. She says it's the confidence to know that you can handle anything which comes your way. So resilience is our capacity to be with and deal with what life throws at us without being, I suppose, spun off our central axis. And if we are spun off, or we find ourselves in a highly stressed place, we can bring ourselves back fairly quickly and not stay in a state of stress or overwhelm for extended periods of time. So again, this is a little bit of a recap. In the last webinar, we spoke about some of the things that affect our capacity for resilience. One was secure and insecure attachment, trauma, which we're going to be diving more into this evening. And the third one we spoke a lot about was interruption to the prefrontal cortex development. We also spoke about the 5 C's of resilient coping. Do you feel calm? Can you stay calm? Do you have clarity about what's going on in your environment? Are you connected to yourself? And can you connect with others? Do you feel competent? Like you can rely on your skills to help you navigate your current situation? And courage. Do you have courage to stay with what is going on until it is resolved? Those come from a book by Linda Graham. So if you want to know more about that and haven't watched the first webinar, please jump into that. I also know most of us on this call are teachers, but we're a pretty big mixture tonight as well. So please, if I comment about something in a particular environment, you can translate it to your environment, or simply ask me how that would fit in your world specifically. So we're going to dive a little bit into trauma, which I know is a big buzzword at the moment, and it's certainly in my awareness and in our understanding that we are at the moment in collective trauma. And so it's a huge topic. And again, as always, we are only going to really touch on a very small part of it. And let's start with perhaps a definition or a couple of definitions of what trauma is. So this definition comes from the book called Fostering Resilient Learners. If you haven't gathered by now, I read an incredible amount. So I like to quote people who are experts in this field, because they've really influenced me when it comes to sharing this work. So in that book, it's defined: trauma is an exceptional experience where powerful and dangerous events overwhelm a person's capacity to cope. And I agree with that. And what I'd like to just bring to everyone's attention is that these don't have to be big. That sentence makes it sound like these are really radical events, but it's our perception of our experience. So a situation where we are powerless, where we are rejected, where we are shamed, all of those can overwhelm a person's capacity to cope, particularly little people. You know, so they don't have a lot of the skill sets we have as adults. So events that from an adult's perspective may look, it's not such a big deal. For that little human, it's a very big deal. And in that moment, they do not have the skill set to deal with or navigate what's happening. Another important thing to understand is trauma is not the event. It's the long-term impact of what happens after the event. So it's like a wound that cannot heal. And we tend to focus on what happened as what we need to resolve. But we need to focus our attention on what is our response been? What has my response been to that event? What has this little person's response been to that event? Because that's what we live out day to day. So it's not saying on any level that the event is irrelevant. It is important, but our focus is on how we responded. And the reason for this is that if I am resourced, if I have high self-awareness and like a stable nervous system, and something happens, I might have the skill set to navigate through that without having any long-lasting effect. Whereas someone else might have an experience and they don't have the skill set or the tools to navigate what's happening or feel it or deal with it, and then they have to create a survival strategy in that moment. And then that plays out after the event over and over again. And so that's what becomes damaging and harmful long term. Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. So I need to stick with my notes, otherwise we will be here for a long time. I've got lots to share. So it's not that a survival strategy. So I want to give you an example here. From my own experience. But first, let me say one more thing. If we've created a survival strategy, so if I'm in an experience that is overwhelming, I cannot cope, I need to do something to keep myself safe. And our survival strategies develop generally when we are little, and we follow those through to adulthood, the same pattern over and over again. So, but in that moment, that survival strategy was absolutely necessary. So our responses to trauma, what we need to put in place to survive, is very important and very necessary. The tricky part comes is that over time, that survival strategy can end up being harmful rather than helpful. Okay, let me give you an example of this. So when I was little, I was still in preschool, so maybe I was, no, maybe 5, maybe 6, anyway, somewhere early days. I had warts on my knee, and back in those days, the doctor used to give my mom, what is it called? What is the nitrogen, the one that burns? Anyway, like acid, basically. And my mom would have to take an earbud and like dip it on the wart and like burn them to try and get them off. And it was horrible. It was horrendous. Anyway, so the one day we're doing this, and I'm sitting there, and my mom's asking me to keep still, and I'm crying and shaking and saying I'm not coping, and all I want to do is run away. Because now this is sore and I want to get away from the pain. I'm feeling powerless. Mom's told me to sit still. And so what I did in that moment was, because I couldn't run away as a survival strategy, get out of the situation, I left my body. I dissociated. And that was to avoid all sorts of feelings that were going on. One was pain, one was helplessness, one was feeling like I wasn't being heard. And my mom wasn't at fault here. No one was at fault. It was just what I was experiencing and not having the tools to be able to cope with it or even communicate how desperate I was in that moment. So in that moment, dissociating from the pain, extremely useful. Now, move myself 20 years later, I am 27, 28, in a relationship, and hard, painful conversations come up, feelings I can't handle. So what do? I leave. I do the same thing. And this particular partner that I was with, he described it like there was a brick wall coming down in front of me and I was just absent. So in that moment, that survival strategy was not useful because, as you can imagine, we didn't resolve very much when that happened. And that harmed our connection. But that's not to say that that survival strategy was wrong. Right, is that all making sense? I'm assuming yes, if no one's got their hand up and no one sent Lorian any questions. Okay. So trauma affects us. It affects us on a physiological level, and it affects our brain and how it works, how it develops. It affects our nervous system. And that in turn affects our ability to cope with what is happening in the moment. So I'm going to hope my technical abilities are up to scratch and share a screen now. Lorian, I think you might need to say it's okay for me to share my screen. So just to go back to kids, if children are experiencing acute ongoing trauma, the brain shifts from developmental mode to survival mode. And that impacts the growth and development of the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in empathy, consequential thinking, and being able to manage and regulate emotions. Okay. And managing and regulating emotions is one of the key elements in resilience. How well can I be with what I am feeling right now? However, stress is not bad. So short periods of stress can build resilience. It can help us as adults and certainly help children. You know, adversity, it stretches us a little bit. But adversity and small amounts of stress are manageable. It's when it's ongoing that it becomes damaging. And I'm even going to use the word dangerous, because I think it can be. So, right. Irrespective of if you are a child or an adult, stress changes your brain. And what we have been living with right now, this COVID lockdown, everything we've gone through in the last 6 months and are still going through, has had a severe impact on our brains. So, right, Lauren, let's do the screen. You need to allow me to screen share, please, now that you're the host.
One participant can share at a time. You should be able to. Or do I need to make you the host again?
No. Okay, we're not winning. No, you don't need to make me the host. You just need to...
Try now.
Okay. Sorry, everyone. Technical... Oh, there we go. How's that? Can everyone see?
I can see it, yeah.
Okay, superb. So, trauma, high levels of stress for extended periods of time changes our brain. So our thinking brain, our prefrontal cortex, is underactive. It goes offline a lot of the time. Our amygdala is overactive. That's the part of the brain that says you're in danger. It gives us the warning. Our hippocampus, which is in the center of our brain, is underactive, and that's involved with emotional regulation and memory recall. And then our survival instincts are very active. So this is responding almost from from an unconscious place, from deep within us. And sometimes we'll do things where we look back and we go, goodness, I don't even know why I acted that way. And so this is where a lot of our survival, so when I did that dissociating in my relationship, I didn't think about it. I didn't think, I need to get out. I just got out, you know? And so it was a survival instinct that kicked in. Right. So this is what happens in our brain, and it stops us from being able to navigate in a useful way what is going on. So I'm going to go through a couple of technical things and then we're going to tie it all together. In the first webinar, I spoke about regulation and dysregulation. So we've just spoken about the brain and what happens when it's under a lot of stress. Our nervous system, I know it's all the same thing, and I'm compartmentalizing it, but talk about our nervous system now that runs through the rest of our body, particularly our autonomic nervous system. This can be in a regulated or dysregulated state. And a dysregulated state is when we are under a lot of stress, and it can take on all sorts of forms and shapes, shutdown, shaking, aggression, sensitivity to light, noise sensitivity, irrational behavior, the feeling of being wired. All of those can show dysregulation. But if I was to describe it, it's when I'm not feeling centered, when I'm definitely not feeling that I can, I can't handle what life throws at me. Like I can't deal with another thing. I have a very short fuse. I get teary really quickly. Okay. So those are just two terms, and now I'm going to dive into a third one, and then we're going to tie it together. So the next concept that I'm going to share with you is something called the window of tolerance. And I'm going to do a screen share again. And this was coined by Dan Siegel. And it's a really good way to explain what happens when we move into dysregulation. So we have a window of tolerance, and this is the place where we are in balance. We can deal with what's happening, we feel safe, we're socially engaged with people, and we can do this. We get a flat tire, it's okay, I can handle this, you know, or something else and something else. What starts to happen though is as we get dysregulated, we start to creep out of the window of tolerance. And we can go in two directions. One is to hyperarousal, and this is anxious, angry, out of control. You want to fight or flight. And this is agitation. So that's hyperarousal, and it's gradated. So as you start to get to the edge of your window of tolerance, you might be feeling like I was today. People were messaging me and all my normal day's work, but the phone would ring and I would just get this, why can't people just leave me alone kind of feeling? And I was like, oh, hold on a minute. I'm noticing this. I'm getting frustrated really quickly. You know? And I wanted to just get out, you know, and you know, at one point I wanted to just throw my phone onto the couch. So it's an action-based place, this hyperarousal. Then hypoarousal is the opposite, spaced out. That's what I did when I was trying to avoid the pain when I left. I spaced out, zoned out, numb, frozen. Your body wants to shut down. And in both of these places, it's not conscious. You really are just reacting from that survival place. What happens when we're under high levels of stress, that like we are now and have been? You'll see this in your kids. Certainly if you're a teacher, probably experience it yourself. Oh, did that stop screen sharing? Then your window of tolerance shrinks. So if you think about what you feel like you could have handled pre-COVID, and now I'm talking emotionally, and how perhaps that capacity is limited. And we can notice this in how we respond. How much patience do we have? How easily are we, I don't know, reading something on Facebook and have a reaction? So maybe even now as we're driving again, how much quicker are we to get grumpy with the drivers in front of us? So our capacity becomes less. And this links to resilience, because the more we can expand the window of tolerance, the greater our resilience. So I think one of the most important things about resilience is that, and being able to grow our capacity to stay centered, is to be able to notice when we're starting to edge out into either of those states, when we're starting to move into a dysregulated state. So here are some words, to give you a bit more of a sense of it. When we're in the window of tolerance, we feel safe. We can be spontaneous. We're curious. We're aware and responsive to what's going on around us. We're also attuned to other people. So when you're in hyperarousal, that's our active state, we feel, we perceive that we're in danger. Your heart rate might go up, rapid breathing, you're in a hypervigilant state. So, you know, like I remember when I was, for a long time, I was in a really hypervigilant state, checking for danger all the time, and the slightest noise would have me jumping. And so you know, you can feel panic, you might get nightmares, you can go round and round in your thinking, or your thinking can get very black and white, this or that. You can only see your perspective, because at that point your survival is what matters. So the fact that you are upset by what I said is not really relevant to me, because right now I'm solely focused on my survival. And if you're thinking about it in yourself, but also with your kids in class, you'll see this in their behavior. Or if you have your own kids, you'll see this in their behavior. If we are in a high arousal, so that's the shutdown place, we feel threatened. We feel like we can't get away. Low energy, don't want to make eye contact, passive, very little facial expression. Difficult to reach. People who are in the shutdown space, like my partner had said, was that you're gone. I can't reach you. I can't find you. So there is no one size fits all to get back to regulation. This is your very personal journey of noticing, and we're going to go through an activity just now where we're going to practice this. Noticing how do I respond when I'm stepping into dysregulation, when I'm on the edge? And what can I do? How do I resource to get myself back to regulation? And that can be all sorts of things. It can be a hug from someone you trust. It can be a walk. It can be a time out and watch Netflix for half an hour. Who knows? You know, there's all sorts of things. But what we are going to look at tonight is how to use your body, movement, a somatic experience, a somatic resource to bring yourself back to regulation. And so I want to define somatic resource quickly. This is just my definition. I hope it makes sense. It's a way that we can move our body that creates a new sensation, a new state, which helps us move from where we are to something else, from dysregulation to regulation. So before I keep going, let's experiment a little bit with this. Breathing is a somatic, sorry, I keep bumping my table, is a somatic resource. And it's not going to work for everyone, but I would like us just to play so you can feel the different states this evokes in your body. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to inhale, and we're going to ensure that our exhale is longer than our inhale. And just in your own time, do this 3 times. What did you notice? please feel in the chat box, or feel free to unmute yourself if you want to share, or not. There's no necessity to share. Chat. Oh, Lorian says she needs to yawn. Beautiful. So yawning is a sign that we're moving into a more relaxed state. And yawning is particularly cool. Here's a known fact, because I'm a neuroscience geek. Yawning at night stimulates melatonin, which helps us go to sleep. Yeah, there we go. Lorian's on her way. If we yawn during the day and it's daylight and we're awake, yawning increases our serotonin. It helps us feel good. I learned that the other day. How cool is that? So if, for an example, as a somatic resource, you're feeling not so great in the middle of the day, you can't concentrate, you do a fake yawn, 3 or 4 times until your body yawns into it. Lorian's going to set everybody off. Okay. So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to switch it round. Now your in-breath is going to be longer than your out-breath. And do 3 or 4 of these. What did you notice? Stress, right? Jen says stress. It's an increase in arousal. And so if we use this as an example, if I am hyper-aroused and I need to come back into regulation, I need to down-regulate, then the slow exhale works for me. But if I'm low energy, low vitality, feeling a little numb, then I need to upregulate. I need to increase my energy. So then the other breath might work. And you might have experienced neither of those, because again, it's what is appropriate for you. So the quicker we can become aware of when we are moving into a dysregulated state, when we can notice what's going on inside, the sooner we're going to be able to bring ourselves back to regulation. And the more that we can do that, the more resilient we are going to feel. The more we're going to be able to cope with and be with what is happening. What can happen when we are dysregulated is that we don't make the wisest choices for ourselves. We can often get stuck in a pattern that's not particularly healthy and actually causes us more stress over time. So the quicker we can come back to regulation, the better overall for our health, for our well-being, for our sleep, for our immune system, for our relationships. Really is a key thing. Right, before I jump into the next bit, how's everyone doing? I am definitely going over time tonight, everyone. I'm sorry. I can tell it already by at least 10 minutes. Does anybody have any questions before I carry on? Happy? Okay, good. So, before I jump into this part, just a reminder about how our brains and our nervous systems are neuroplastic. And what that means is we can change the way we do things until forever. It doesn't seem to be a point where we stop being able to change neural networks. And the key to this, which is also what I said in the first webinar, is small repetitions often. Small repetitions often. Okay, so back to screen share. Okay, if it'll work. All right, here's a cute little picture I found about the window of tolerance. Right? It's normal to have a smaller window of tolerance during stressful times. I love this. I will definitely share it in a Teachable. Okay, so this comes from Pat Ogden, who is one of the leaders in somatic-based therapy, and she's been doing it for a long time and is phenomenal in the work that she does. So here's what she says. I've also got a nifty little worksheet that you're all going to get that walks you through this, which we're going to go through now, but you'll also get it when the recording comes for this webinar. So 5 steps to change the brain and develop resilience. The first step is we need to identify triggers. So if I put the screen up here, which I'm seeing everyone's videos, can you still see? Doesn't block anything, hey, Lorian? Okay, perfect. So we identify triggers. What causes us to start to move into a dysregulated state? The secret here is that we don't focus on the trigger. We acknowledge it. That causes me stress. But then we shift our focus to what's going on inside. How am I feeling? What is the sensation? What is my body doing? Is my heart beat up? Is my heart rate accelerated? Am I breathing fast? Am I flushed? Or am I kind of withdrawing into myself? What is your body telling you? And then, and we're going to go through this now, is we're going to find a somatic resource to help counter the stress, to help bring us back into the window of tolerance. So, we could use breathing. We're going to go through a few more now. And again, it's about what makes you feel good. It's what helps you. It could be similar to someone else, but it's unlikely that it's going to be exactly the same. Then, I want to say one more thing here. The reason we that the somatic works so well is it's from the bottom up, right? It bypasses the franticness that our brain is trying to cope with, and the stories it's telling, and the narrative and circular thinking it's getting itself into, or the complete shutdown. So the somatic resourcing goes from our bodies up. We don't need to think about it. We just have to feel it and sense it and know it. It's very difficult to think your way back to regulation. It's incredibly tricky, because in that moment, your thinking brain is generally not online. And so your survival strategies are running the show, desperately trying to keep you safe. Okay. So the somatic resourcing is a very gentle, practical, and quick way to help you resource and come back to center. Okay. This is very important. It's not enough to just think or acknowledge, oh yes, getting a hug would help me, or standing up and moving around would be useful. We need to do it. And not only do we need to do it, we have to really focus on how it makes us feel. That feeling of calm, feeling of safety, feeling of energy or empowerment. Really noticing those sensations. Pat was saying, savor it. I'll give an example of this. When I'm dysregulated, and I've used this before, I don't like to move. So that's the hypo, right? I get contracted and I sit and I work and I justify working for 12 hours straight without moving. It's not a useful place for me. Okay? So I've been practicing and I've been moving every day. And when I move, I feel better. And then after I've done exercise or just got up and walked around, is to go, remember how this makes you feel, okay? Because I feel good every time. And that's helped me to get up off my chair even when it feels difficult, because I have a sensory recall, I have a sensory reference of pleasure and goodness. Okay. And then repeat the above 4 steps as many times a day. So Pat says we capitalize on neuroplasticity by many small repetitions of new action and awareness. So remember, there's kind of 2 steps here. The awareness is identifying the trigger, 1, and noticing what it does in our bodies. Also, noticing and practicing what somatic resource helps us feel better. And then kind of 3 is our crossover step, and then 4 is the action step, and 5 is the action step. Okay. So now we're going to go through each of those steps, and these are the worksheets that you're going to get. Oops, not that one. This is what Pat took us through in the training, and it's so great. Be gentle with yourselves. Don't dig in now if it feels like it might be stressful. Just take in the information. But I really encourage you to do these worksheets at some point. And if you're in Teachable, there'll be a space where you can comment and share. And I keep track of that. So if you have any questions, you can ask them there as well. So, triggers. This was a workshop that was based on our current reality. So you can see things regarding COVID, passing people without masks, oppression, news. There's lots going on. What triggers you? I don't watch the news personally. So the other things that put me into dysregulation. When I'm on my cell phone too much, like today, I was up at 6 in front of my computer after going to bed at 1. No, 1:30 after a radio interview at midnight. So I did not get much rest, and then I was on, and I could feel that I was edgy, and so that's a trigger for me when I'm not pausing, when I'm not resting and having timeouts during my day. So cell phones maybe are just in general are a trigger for me. Just take a moment to think about what one of your triggers are. Maybe it's the uncertainty in a school, the changing information all the time, just don't know what's happening. Maybe it's government's ridiculous rules. Just notice, okay? Once you've found one, just hold it in your mind and remember, we're not elaborating and going into the story of it. We're just noticing, and then we're switching to how does it feel in my body? So here are some examples. In the hyperarousal, can you notice how much my voice, like the tone of my voice has changed and how quickly I'm starting to speak after talking about my cell phone incident? Okay, use me as an example. Okay, we're going to go with this. I'm reflecting on my day today, and oh my gosh, I really did get to the point where I was kind of snapping at people, and I had to stop. Okay? My jaw is tight. My heart rate is up. And I was definitely having thoughts about how idiotic every single person is and why can they not just deal with their own problems? Why does everybody need me? Okay. So those were some of my experiences today. And see if you can notice some of yours. And it's just noticing. So now, what can I do? What can you do to help bring you back into your window of tolerance from a somatic perspective? So I noticed as I clocked that arousal and I was sharing it with you, what I immediately did was that, breathe in and sit back. That, because when I am agitated, I come forward and I hunch and I look on my phone and I tap furiously, if we're using that example. So just the sitting back. Right. How much can I sit back? All right. And what does that invite into my world? Into my internal world. More stillness. I can feel I don't need to rush through my words. I feel like the tone of my voice has changed. I feel more present. I feel like I'm with you. So there are a couple of ways that you can resource somatically. So you might need to give yourself a hug. What we did in the beginning, this self-touch. Maybe I just need to wiggle a bit to orientate to my surroundings. I've mentioned orientation a few times in various ways. Lorian, could you just make a note? I'll send a little bit of an extra orientation practice. Breathing. So the word push there, Pat was saying it's sometimes you need to actually like push away what feels like it's encroaching. Push away. This can look like anything. She also spoke about smiling. And this isn't like, hey, this kind of fake smile, because that doesn't necessarily feel good. But it might just be like just a slow or when we smile, it shifts us hormonally. Different neuropeptides get released. So you can play with smiling. And sometimes there is no smile available. I've been there and it's just not available. And then there's something else. You will know because it feels good. It feels good. Right, so okay, it feels good. Here's some of the things. You can start to feel safe, calm. If you were shut down, you can start to feel energized, more hopeful. You can think clearly, positive self-talk. I'm doing a workshop. I was going to do it on the 19th of September, but it's too soon and I've got too much on my plate. 10th of October, 3 hours. Please join me. It's going to be great. We're going to do lots more of this kind of stuff. And I'm going to talk about how the state of dysregulation affects our thoughts. When we are dysregulated, we have a tendency towards the negative, fuzzy thinking, like cotton wool in your brain. Those can, not always, but they can be symptomatic of not being regulated. Oh, end of slideshow. Oh, I'm 2 minutes. I've still got more, but just a little bit, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. Okay. I'd like to play just with two things here, just with this concept of finding our somatic resource. Again, it is this simple. It is this simple. It's not complicated. It's move in a way that makes you feel good. Not always easy because our survival instincts, our survival patterns are strong, which is why we need to practice, repattern. Okay, so if you're sitting, just take a moment to notice what you're feeling, your sensations. And if you're struggling to get inside your body and notice what's going on, it's okay. It's practice. We develop this awareness over time. Now, straighten your spine, but like kind of reach up through the top of your head. So just straighten your spine. What happens? Now hunch down like this. And straighten your spine. Which one felt better in this moment? In a board meeting, that one might not feel so good, but right now that actually felt quite nice. I'm like, let's going to bed. I want to snuggle up. But in another situation, that might not. But often, just sitting up opens us up a bit. Okay. I'd like you to give it a go now and see if you can find a movement that helps you feel safe. Okay, hold on, is there a comment here? Oh, from Laurie. See if there's a movement that can help you feel safe. And play a bit. You might go here, yeah, not really. What is it? What is it? And it might be different in different situations, but often the same movement will have the same effect. So what is going to allow you, what movement is going to allow you to feel safe? Whatever that means, however you interpret that. Okay. Well, we absolutely will send the recording to everyone. So for me, it took me a little bit of a while to find it, but hands on my heart, and that felt good. Then I needed to straighten up as well. That allows me to feel really present and safe, connected to myself. Would anybody like to share? Lorian, thank you. Hand on your belly and feet pushing into the ground. That makes me feel like I want to get up and dance. That's fabulous, but not safe. I want to get up and be, energized. Amazing. Would anybody else like to share? Okay. Then we're going to do one more. And then it will be time for questions or good nights. So, this one is linked to gratitude. And we know that when we focus on things that we're grateful for, oh, Jen, rocking from side to side. Beautiful. I find that very calming. So going back to gratitude, we know that it helps us to feel good and feel more connected and feel positive. Sometimes, particularly if we are dysregulated, it's difficult to find gratitude. You know, the 5-year-old that just goes, nothing is working. No, nothing is good. I hate it here. Yeah, you know that? And off they go, in that moment, like there's nothing to be grateful for. It's all horrible, And although that's a 5-year-old, a lot of the time, if we were really honest, that's probably what's going on inside here. And then we get spun, and then someone says, well, just think of something you feel grateful for. Choice words come out of my mouth at that point. However, if we can access the somatic resource or something that movement that makes us feel, that can engage with gratitude, we can more easily get to that state. So, give it a go. I'm going to try one, which is a standing up one, actually. This one I actually put in the feeling cards, Lauren, if you remember. So what works for me is standing and my hands out, just my hands out, and my chin lifted, and my shoulders kind of drop back. So it would look like, so my hands are, you can't really see it, but my chin is kind of lifted and I'm soft, but my hands are out and soft, not pointed hard, but soft. Just standing like that. I can access more, I can start to think, okay, yeah. I can name one thing that I'm grateful for. Sometimes it takes me a long time of standing. Sometimes it's not instantaneous in 30 seconds. So we can use our bodies to help us move to a state. I remembered this, and then we practice it. And then it becomes easier to move from dysregulation to regulation. From there is nothing to be grateful for to finding something to be grateful for. That transition starts to become easier the more that we practice. Another one is courage. We did this last time. I think we spoke about our superhero poses. If you stand and you take up space, what does it do if your shoulders are back and your fists are in your hips? It creates a somatic reference point, which allows you to embody that more fully. Okay, 3 minutes to my 10 minutes over. Best I stop. And I best stop because I could still go on and on. Does anybody have any questions? As you can tell, this work really thrills me. The somatic processing, the somatic experiencing is proving from the research that's being done to be one of the most effective ways to deal with trauma, big feelings, overwhelm, and it goes hand in hand with the seeing and the mindfulness and the prefrontal cortex, all the good bits of that when the prefrontal cortex is online. It is an easy way into ourselves to help ourselves. It is potent with children. It can be woven in to any situation. And particularly when it comes to trauma, we don't need to know the history, and as teachers in particular, you don't always know the story. You just see a child behaving in a certain way. And if you can help them learn and invite the somatic resourcing, they'll then be able to do it for themselves. I wish I'd known about this in my matric finals when my brain shut off and I couldn't see for 45 minutes in my maths exam. That's what happened. I was so stressed, I shut down, I couldn't see. Failed that one exam, for sure. I don't even think I answered 2 questions. And of course, the more I couldn't see, the more stressed I got, the more I couldn't think. I had no resources to navigate my way back to regulation. Okay. It's just and so quiet. I'm going to make the assumption that everyone is feeling delighted with this information, as I am. Does anybody have any questions? Did it all make sense? Do you want me to go over anything? I'm not rushing off. Please feel free if you need to leave. But I kind of schedule till 8:30 to be available for questions and anything that's needed. Anyone? Everyone happy?
Kate, I have a question actually. Wait,
Sure.
there's one there from Abora. Orientating your environment helps me a lot. I've learned to be slow in speaking and reacting. Thanks so much, Kate. And then there's another one. This was very helpful as I experienced a lot of trauma during lockdown, 2 burglaries, etc. Thank you for this help. From Dell. I want to see if there's any others I've missed. No. Jenny said, after this, I'm ready for day 28 now.
Yeah, day 28 tomorrow. It's day 28 to 45, all in one. Lauren, what was your question, hey?
I did a session with a woman yesterday that identified there was a pathway in my body that was related to like an old pattern of behavior in terms of how to handle trauma. And she said it's not there. It was a physically sick pathway. And she said, my body's fine, but it's a habit. It's a habit that's like been worn in. And I'm even sitting here tonight feeling the habit of that pathway. And I can't say that that sick thing is there anymore, because it's not. It's gone, like diagnostic gone. How do that repatterning small things often, it's like how to unwind that freaking pathway so that I don't keep falling off the rails, like going, actually, you don't need to freak out, body, you're fine. And I'm struggling with that a little bit today. It's like how to change behavior, or I don't even know if I know how to ask the right question.
Oh, you've asked it beautifully. So what you can do is you can notice, so you said the words freaking out. So you can go and you can say, what happens in my body when I'm freaking out? What sensation? So something triggers, right? That's the trigger, whatever it is, that steps you towards the freak out. What's going on somatically? What's going on inside when you're freaking out? And then what can I do to take me to a different state? What can I do to help my body calm down? So I'm making an assumption here that freaking out is like.
But the freak out, it feels like the freak out isn't happening because I don't feel stressed, but I can recognize there's a pattern in my body that's happening, which is what used to happen when I was stressed. Not feeling stressed, but my body's got this like contraction in the gut diaphragm. And I'm like, okay, but I'm not feeling stressed about anything. So I'm just at the moment practicing breathing into my belly. I don't know what else to do other than this constant like.
Right. So consciously, your prefrontal cortex is looking around and going, no, darling, there's nothing to be stressed about. Your survival brain is going, lady, there is a pandemic out
Yes.
here. And
Yes.
there are so many dangers, and you have, so you're talking about something called neuroception, which we're going to talk about in the workshop. And basically, it's our spidey sense. Right? It's our spidey sense that goes, what is safe and what is dangerous? And your spidey sense is on high alert for whatever reason, and it hasn't undone it. So the tension in your belly, so that's what you notice. Don't need a story, don't need an event. This is just what your body knows how to do, because that's what you've been patterning for 40 years. So okay, so then my tummy gets tight. What can I do, like you said, to breathe, to let that go, or to shift it, or to hold it tenderly? Are you feeling unsafe? So it's not even that you need to identify. It's like what would feel better? What would feel good? So I see people are leaving. Please, you're most welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
But does that make sense? So so it sounded like that tension doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel
pretty uncomfortable. I haven't eaten in 2 days.
right. So it's not about making it go away either. It's just about what can you do to ease that just a little bit. What body movement?
I'm looking forward to the workshop where we go into neuroception more. I've signed up already.
Yeah. So it's subtle. We think when we've got this big tension that we need to now have a big solution.
Yeah.
Just can be subtle. It feels big because you've been doing it for 40 years.
For 48 years. Yeah. Okay, sure.
Yeah. And so it's just going to take gentle.
A little time.
Again. But you'll be surprised how quickly it changes.
Not Jerry.
So I think we should end it there as everybody's dashing off. Thank you everyone for being here. I hope it was useful. And we'll email out the recording and those worksheets. If you have any questions, please let me know. And I hope you all have a lovely evening. Unless anybody has a question, then I'm available. No, Laura, no questions on your side?
Lots of thank yous.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night, everyone. Take really good care. Night, Jen. Good luck for day 28. You and me both.